And welcome again, everyone, to Donovan and Dino. I'm Dave DeNatale alongside the voice of the Browns, Jim Donovan. It's a Tuesday edition of the show as we look back on the Monday night game that was, Jimmy, I mean, if you're a football fan and you necessarily have a rooting interest in last night's game, that was a classic. That was an enjoyable game between two great rivals.
Yeah, it really was. And I know Monday Night Football has been lacking those kind of games now for a pretty extended period of time, which I think that ESPN, ABC has always said, hey, we need better games. They've gone to the NFL a lot and said, we need you allow NBC to flex games in on their Sunday night schedule. And we're kind of left here with a watered down schedule too many times. So, this one last night, this one will live for the ages for all of the things that happened in the game that are numerous. I mean, they really are, in an incredible back and forth battle with really rising stars in the quarterback position, perhaps one of the greatest kickers of all time, certainly the greatest kicker in the game for a long period of time, and Justin Tucker, and just all kinds of drama with the Browns becoming a relevant part of the NFL in December, and the Ravens showing a lot of fight and fortitude coming back after going through all of that COVID situation and having their season uprooted and playing on weird days during midweek and coming back and winning this game, a game that they absolutely needed to have. And now with the remaining games on their schedule, they are definitely a team that you have to eye towards the playoffs, towards making it if this just takes care of business. For the Browns, though, heartbreaker, really a heartbreaker to lose it. Great to be in the game, no doubt about it. Probably in the long run, Dino, they'll learn a lot from being in the game and the way it went. But for the moment, that 24-hour rule, it is a heartbreaker.
Yeah, I think, I completely agree. I think we may look back at last night's game in 2021, 2022 and say, boy, that's maybe when we had an inkling that this franchise really had turned a corner to become a legitimate playoff team, a playoff contender, and much more. But I think you said it so well last night. I mean, it just felt like they stumbled on one or two points of the game, whether it was special teams, they couldn't get their kicks to go, right. And the one turnover from Baker. And unfortunately, your margin of error against a team like Baltimore, when they've got Lamar Jackson, is razor thin.
It really is, and it's been that way for a long period of time, and the Ravens do it, and they're one of those rare teams in the NFL that really plays hard-nosed football when they're on the road. They win some big, big road games. I mean, they won an AFC championship game in Foxborough against Tom Brady and the Patriots at one time. I mean, that's no small feat with Brady in his heyday and Belichick over on the other sideline. They really play very, very tough on the road. You speak about, you look back and you say, hey, maybe this game down the road, you look back and say that Monday night game that stung so much after they lost that, they learned a lot from that. And I'm speaking about the Browns. But if you go back a couple of weeks ago, when the Ravens and Steelers were supposed to play on Thanksgiving Day in the evening on NBC and Channel 3, and the game had to be moved because of an outbreak with the Ravens of COVID, and then it got moved again and again and again, and it's finally played like on a Wednesday afternoon at Heinz Field, and they're missing everybody. The Ravens are missing everybody. No Lamar Jackson and a bunch of other players because of coronavirus and some injuries. And yet in that game, they played the Steelers right down to the last possession, even playing with like a junior varsity team. And they went out, and I thought, Dino, that kind of fortified them and made them say, hey, listen, we can do this if we stick together, no matter who's playing for us. But when we get our regular guys back, if we continue to play this way, we're going to be the Ravens that everybody thought we were going to be at the beginning of the year, which was a real, genuine Super Bowl contender. So I agree. I think that your margin for error with a team like that is very, very slim. So when you miss kicks and leave a potential 4 points out on the field on the kicking game, and then give them kind of a gift wrap touchdown on the interception by Bowser, and they get the ball at the 1 yard line, that's a lot to overcome. And whatever the plan was to play Lamar Jackson, it did not work. It did not work. He had them stymied all night long. They were running around like they just didn't know which end was the right end. I mean, do you rush him? Yes. Do you try and keep him in the pocket? Well, that's much easier said than done. And I think, Dino, they live on a very unique offense where they live on the broken play. They really do. They live on the broken play because he ad-libs everything so much and breaks containment. And then those wide receivers you always hear about that scramble drill that the receivers, they know the quarterback's scrambling, so they find a spot on the field where they're going to get open. Those are their pass routes because they know that guy's going to run around and create an opening, so they find a spot and they make the plays.
Well, and, it reminded me of the game, the season finale 2 years ago in Baltimore against Greg Williams' defense. That Browns team was coming in. It was Baker's rookie year and everything. They had so much swagger, and they just couldn't, no matter what they did, they just couldn't put a hat on Lamar Jackson. And, Greg Williams was trying to be aggressive, as was his forte, and that didn't work. You just sit there and you go, it does illustrate, especially in the linebacking core, maybe in the secondary. The Browns are going to have to get an upgrade in athleticism down the road. And there's nothing you can do about it on December 15th, but, it highlights what you still need to do to improve yourself.
Yeah, it's been the concern all year. I mean, I don't think you can hide it. We were worried about their linebackers, and we were worried about the secondary. And remember now, Denzel Ward has been out, and that's a big problem. It really is. If you compare the corner play that the Ravens had last night versus the corner play that the Browns had, not only last night, but in the games since Ward went out, it's vastly different. It's aggressive. It's man-to-man. It's very physical on the Baltimore side. On the Baltimore side, it's kind of keep the play in front of you. Don't get beat over the back of your head on the Brown side. And, that's very conservative, whereas on the other side, it's very, very aggressive. So I think the Browns are really – and Dino, they're going to have to come up with a way to play against this guy, Lamar Jackson, because you play him twice a year, and he's not going anywhere. He's going to be with the Ravens for a long time. So, they're going to have sleepless nights, I know, defensively when they break this season down and say, okay, what are we going to do when we play this guy twice a year? We have to come up with a better plan. If you go back to last year, the first meeting between the two teams, the game the Browns won 40-25 in Baltimore, they got out in front in that game and then really ran the ball and kept him off the field. Chubb had that big, big game in Baltimore, and they ran the ball and they kept possession of the football. And that might be the best defense against him. Now, I know a lot of people think they have a tape, a read on him to throw, but I think you have to really even be more specific. I think you want him to throw from the pocket rather than outside the pocket, and he loves getting outside the pocket. I mean, because at that point, he's a real threat. Is he going to run? Is he going to throw? Those defensive backs are frozen. Do I come up and play him on the run? Do I stay with my guy? That's what happened on that 4th and 5 play. Mitchell didn't know what to do. Was he going to come up and play him to run? Or was he going to and leave his guy? Or was he just going to stay with his guy? And it turned out he got beat over the top on that big play to Marquise Brown. But you're right. I mean, the defense that's an unfinished project by the Browns. They accomplished a lot offensively in the offseason, and they kind of, tinkered with the defense. And remember, no Grant Delpit. I think he was drafted for this kind of play, really, to play a guy like Lamar Jackson, to play Roethlisberger, and to play Joe Burrows. In other words, to play in the AFC North. And, of course, he hasn't been with them all year.
Yeah, I was thinking about that last night. Their starting secondary, that they maybe had penciled in after the draft and free agency, Ward, Williams. They went out and got Harrison right before the season started, and Delpit. Well, none of them could play. I mean, they're all hurt. So, I mean, there is something to be said. You can't put guys out there when they're hurt, let alone when you go out and draft. But that illustrates your point pretty carefully. On the offensive side, I think we learned something about Baker Mayfield last night, maybe that we hadn't seen to this point. He had the adversity through the first interception he had thrown in 5 games. The Browns are down by 2 scores. And Jimmy, he came back and played as well as we've seen him play through the rest of the game. And every time the Browns needed a response score, Baker gave him one. I mean, that was impressive.
Yeah, he's been impressive really since the bye week, I think. He's had a good year, But since the bye week, when they kind of tore everything apart and melted things down and went over things with him and had a chance to, take a deep breath and say, okay, here's what worked through the first 8 games. Here's what didn't work so well. Let's fix some of these things for the final 8 games. And I think he's come out. He's been very open-minded. I think he likes being coached, and he is being coached, and he's being coached hard. And I can see a great improvement in him. He really, his accuracy is back. I know he threw the pick last night, but remember, he was throwing a couple a game, and now he's down to 1 in 5 games. So I think all of that is good. I think his leadership has never been questioned. I think that he's extremely competitive. He has no fear playing in that kind of a game. In fact, I think he reveres it. But there's no doubt he wants to start being on the other side of the scoreboard in those games. And I think he's tired of losing to that particular team and that particular quarterback. I think they're 1 and 4 against him now since he's taken over as the starter in Baltimore. And that's going to have to turn around. There's no doubt about it. And I know Mayfield, that burns in his belly right now. But you got to take the good from last night. And I thought he was exceptional. You're right, in constantly leading them back and knowing what was going on in the game situation. The only thing I really had a problem with, I thought they came apart from the seams right at the end of the first half. And they're out by midfield. They got an offensive pass interference penalty on Donovan Peoples-Jones. Mayfield gets hit with an intentional grounding. That's a killer because you lose the yardage and the down. And you got a 36-yard punt from Gillen. And Baltimore gets the ball out by the 45 on their own side. And, man, that's easy pickings. And remember now, they got the ball to start the second half, too, and they scored on that one. So that's the only time I thought that they came apart from the seams. Other than that, I thought he was deserving to win the game. He didn't win it. He's deserving to win it. And at some point, he realizes he's going to have to win that game.
Well, and now we're down to 3. I mean, the 3 games to go here in this season, and 2 straight here in the Big Apple, starting with Sunday night against the Giants. And the margin for error, we talked about the margin for error for last night's game, but the margin for error to keep yourself in the playoff mix is pretty short. You can't stumble in these next 2 games. You just can't. I mean, because we talked about 11 is the one that'll get you in. 10, then you have to 10 wins, and you have to start worrying about what other teams might do, especially with Baltimore right behind you.
Yeah, there's a path, and you don't want to be sitting there on that last Sunday going into that game against the Steelers and need 3 other games around the NFL. That's what happened to them in that 10-win season of Romeo Crennel. They needed a bunch of things to happen, and they needed the biggest thing to happen. They needed Indianapolis to beat Tennessee that Sunday night to get them in, and they didn't get in because they had lost the week before against Cincinnati. You don't want to be in that situation. You want to take care of it yourself. Take care of it yourself. There's a direct path. Go in and win in New York. 2 very winnable games, I think. The Giants game being tougher, I think, than the Jets game. And I think it's very doable for them. I'll be very interested to see how they play now, because they have been playing well after they lose. Not that they've lost a lot, only 4 times. But they haven't stacked losses. I mean, they lose and then they come back and they win. And, and they go off on a mini winning streak and they might drop another one, but then they get right back on the track. And that's what's needed now. So I'll be fascinated to see. I think they're going to be healthier Sunday night than they were last night. I think there's a good shot they get Ward back. I think there's a really good shot they get Hooper back. I don't know about Kadarius Hodge. But, I think things look a little bit better for them. Realizing what's at stake, I would think that, that they'll use the good from Baltimore, correct the bad from Baltimore, and take it out on the Giants on Sunday night.
Yeah, this is another it's interesting to see as we watch Kevin Stefanski and how he grows as a head coach here in year 1. He's had more obstacles than most first-year coaches can ever have with COVID and everything else that we've had to go through in 2020. But it's can you get everybody refocused? And I think he's said all the right things all year long about, it's 1 week and we're 1-0 and that kind of thing. He's had the right mentality, and the players seem to feed off of it.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think they're very unified. I really do. I think he shares. He's got a real nice blend. I think he definitely shares in the losses, and I don't think he takes any credit for the wins. I think he allows them to celebrate the wins. I think he gives them all the credit in the world. You can see that in his post-game locker room speeches after a victory. And on the losses, I think he takes them very hard, and he's very self-critical of himself. And usually, I said the team bounces back. Normally, he bounces back very well, too. And so I would expect that coming up this weekend against the Giants. And I think that they'll be okay. I really do. If they continue to play the way they're playing, I think that, they should go in there, and I don't think that it needs to be dramatic. I think that they can go in and have a very authoritative win where we're not recovering onside kicks at the end of the game. I really do. That would be nice for us all, because They've been really tight games. And last night was really, I have to tell you, that was an incredible back and forth swing and emotion in that game.
How long did it take you to fall asleep after calling that game?
I went home and actually listened to the game over again to hear how it sounded. Long time, I have to tell you. Instead of listening to post-game radio shows coming home, I listened to Christmas music coming home in the car. I needed a little break from, hey, why didn't they do that? Why didn't he make the kick? Why did they score so fast? So I needed a little bit of, I needed Bing Crosby instead of listening to Bob from Akron.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I totally know what you mean. Hey, before I let you go, I wanted to get your thought on, as we were obviously getting ready for the Browns to play last night, the Indians came out and officially announced that, yes, at some point we are going to change the nickname. Just wanted to get your thoughts on all of this changing now that's going to be happening with the franchise on the baseball side.
Well, Dino, I think they're going through a massive change, not just in nickname and what they're going to wear, how they're going to present themselves out on the field. But I think they're also going to go through a massive change of how they're going to present themselves on the field with who the heck is going to be on the field. I also think that every team in Major League Baseball took a massive economical hit last year. And I don't think any of them can really take that and take it and say, that was nothing. I mean, they lost hundreds of millions of dollars. I don't know what the Indians' total was, but I'm sure, it was up there. And I can't think of a team really that can at least afford that than the Indians. I really can't. I'm not slamming the Dolans or anything. It's just dollars. I don't think in this market that a team like the Indians that's family-owned can incur that kind of a financial hit for a season with no definitive promise yet that, that's going to get any better, at least at the start of the baseball season, that the ballpark's going to be filled with fans. I mean, we don't know that yet. We really don't know how this whole thing is going to shake out or when the heck the season is going to start. But I think the Indians are in for a massive change, a totally different team on the field. I think Lindor is going to be traded. I think the name is going to be changed. I don't know how much more gas Terry Francona has in the tank or if he wants to be a part of a pretty significant rebuild. I think that when we talk about playoff and championship windows, how far are they open? I think the Indians was wide open for a period of time. And they had a great run going to the 7th game of the World Series and the playoffs a number of other times. But I think that has closed a lot, and it might be closing even more. And it's not just the renaming of the team. It's just the whole business situation in baseball, and in particular, their situation in Cleveland with their ownership.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how this all plays itself out here going forward. But I wanted to get your thoughts on that as in the midst of everything that went on with the Browns. Jimmy, it's always a pleasure, my friend. We'll see you next week for another edition of Donovan and Dino after the Giants game. And all the best, my friend.
All right. Thanks, Dino.
All right. Thanks for watching, everyone. Donovan and Dino right here on WKYC.com.